Wilson with Cowboy Wisdom Unleashed. Today's podcast is 7 ways why mindset is unadmitted. Mind Museum Stubbornness. Mindset is a curator voice, polishing old beliefs, guarding emotional fossils, and insisting that yesterday's logic still applies. It's stubbornness disguised as growth, a refusal to let instinct outrun memory. The museum mind loves mindset because it keeps you loyal to the archived scripts and repetitions instead of the frontier foresight that lights your light of life. Because mindset tries to control reality through thought. Mindset says, if you think hard, life will obey me. That's pure BS museum mind arrogance. Slow, cautious, inherited. Sovereign sensing moves faster than mindsets. Mental settings, dissolving its stubborn grip, replacing it with breath-born immediacy. Because mindset reinforces identity instead of dissolving it. Mindset protects the identity exhibit, the curated story built from lineage, correctness, and emotional fossils. And see, that's what an emotional snapshot is, an emotional fossil. It keeps you repeating yourself, reenacting roles, obeying yesterday. Savage wisdom rises only when identity collapses and instinct becomes your clarity. As I'm introducing something called savage clarity, dissolving mindset. The difference between savage clarity and mindset is savage clarity is now, mindset is memory. Savage clarity rises from breath, instinct, and immediacy. It's living the frontier. Mindset comes from archived logic, inherited beliefs, emotional fossils, and emotional snapshots. And as savage clarity perceives reality, mindset interprets it through yesterday's filters. One is alive now, the other is historical and hysterical. Savage clarity dissolves identity. Mindset protects it. Savage clarity cuts through persona, character, and correctness. It sees without costume, while it witnesses and observes life without a costume. Mindset reinforces the identity, the exhibit, keeping you loyal to who you were taught to be. Savage clarity liberates mindset and savage clarity liberates mindset, maintains the museum of your mind. Savage clarity is sensing, mindset is thinking. Sensing is sovereign, fast, intellectual, and uncolonized. As thinking is slow, repetitive, cautious, and ancestor coded. Savage clarity moves you forward. Mindset loops you backward. Savage clarity receives the now. Mindset replays the past. Because mindset is the ego clinging to yesterday's exhibits. Why forthright is a higher frequency than a savage sovereignty over mindset. Forthright is presence. Mindset is memory. Forthright erupts from immediacy, breath and instinct, and raw perception. Mindset is a museum mind rerun stitched from yesterday's caution, logic, and emotional fossils. Sovereignty lives in the now. Mindset lives in the archives of the mind museum and the scripts from yesterday and the repetition from yesterday. Forthright wins because presence outruns memory every single time. Forthright dissolves identity. Mindset protects it. Mindset reinforces the identity exhibits. The curator character built from lineage, correctness, and inherited vocabulary. Forthright shatters identity and replaces it with sovereign immediacy. Savage sovereignty rises because Forthright refuses to reenact roles the museum mind rehearsed. Forthright is instinctual voltage. Mindset is obedient, ancestor obedient logic. Mindset depends on thinking, knowing, slow, cautious, and archived. Forthright is instinct, breath driven, frontier born, and uncolonized curiosity. Instincts move without permission, dissolving every museum mind boundary. That's why forthright is the highest frequency sovereignty. It can be domestic. It can never be domesticated. Why mindset is opinions, viewpoints, and beliefs, and museum mind with outside anchors. Mindset is a museum mind's external scaffolding. Opinions, viewpoints, and beliefs are not inner truth. They're outside anchors the museum mind installs to keep you attached to yesterday's logic. They stabilize identity, the identity exhibit, preventing instinct from rising onto sovereign immediacy. Savage wisdom sees mindset as external hardware, never internal clarity. Mindset attaches you to borrowed perceptions from yesterday's dismay. Viewpoints and beliefs are inherited, absorbed, or culturally installed. They come from outside sources, never your frontier sense. These anchors keep your nervous system loyal to external correctness instead of internal sovereignty. Highest frequency clarity dissolves these borrowed anchors and restores instinct as your navigation. Mindset is an obedience mechanism disguised as intelligence. Opinions, beliefs are museum mind tools that keep you repeating yourself, reenacting roles, and obeying emotional fossils. They anchor your nervous system to what is familiar, never to what is authentic. Savage wisdom rises instantly, unhooks me from those outside anchors. Let my breath-born immediacy replace mental obedience. Why museum mindsets, opinions, beliefs, viewpoints lower your business bottom line. Because opinions anchor you to yesterday's earnings ceilings. Museum mind opinions are built from old fears, old logic, and old identity scripts. They keep your nervous system loyal to yesterday's financial frequency instead of today's sovereign expansion. When you obey viewpoints instead of instinct, you operate from outdated limits. And your bottom line reflects the past, never the frontier. Because the viewpoint replace opportunity sensing with mental noise. Viewpoints are museum mind chatter, commentary, caution, and correctness. They drown out instinctual clarity that detects openings, timing, momentum, and money flow. Wealth moves fast, mindset moves slow. Bottom line drops because mental noise blocks the sovereign sensing that creates real-time prosperity. because beliefs anchor your identity instead of your expansion. Beliefs anchor your identity instead of your expansion. Beliefs are emotional fossils inherited, absorbed, and culturally installed. How does that feel? Culturally installed. And if you really start witnessing and observing it, you'll understand that. You'll be aware of that. They anchor your nervous system to who you were, never who you're rising of. Expansion, risk, immediacy, and sovereign movement create wealth. Identity hates all four. The bottom line drops because beliefs keep you repeating yourself instead of rising onto your moneyed up frontier lifestyle. Why saying mind takes you back to the past? Because mind is a museum word built from memory. The moment you say mind, you activate the archives, the curator, the collector, and the narrator of yesterday. Mind is never present. It's storage. It pulls you backward into emotional fossils, inherited logic, and identity scripts that no longer match your rising frequencies. Because mind is a vocabulary tether to old identities. The word itself is an anchor, a linguistic leash tied to who you were, never who you're becoming. Saying mind resummons the character, the role, the persona, and the museum exhibit. Savage acumen knows every time you speak the word, you reinforce the past instead of the frontier, because mind activates thinking instead of sensing. The mind activates thinking instead of sensing. You're going to sense and question your way through life. Thinking is slow, archived, and obedient. Sensing is sovereign, immediate, and breath born. The word mind triggers old machinery, analysis, and caution. Correctness, all of which collapse your frequency back into yesterday. Sovereignty rises only when instinct replaces a museum mind narrator. Why mindset is egotistical stubbornness, know-it-all ignorance that shuts off listening. And that's the thing about thinking and knowing. You shut off all listening and hearkening to wisdom. Mindset is the ego's insisting it already knows everything. Man, I had a good one of them, that ego. Mindset is a museum mind curator saying, I got it figured out. That's never clarity. That's arrogance dressed as intelligence. When the ego believes it already knows, it stops listening, stops sensing, and stops perceiving. Savvy's acumen sees mindset as the death of curiosity, the collapse of awareness, shuts down sovereign listening. Mindset is stubborn identity maintenance. Mindset protects the identity exhibit, the character built from lineage, fear, correctness, and emotional fossils. Identity hates being challenged, so mindset becomes stubborn, rigid, and defensive. It refuses new information because new information threatens the museum mind persona. High frequency sovereignty requires listening. Mindset refuses it. Mindset replaces sensing with mental noise. Mindset is thinking, narrating, arguing, defending, and all the noise and no perception. It shuts off listening because listening requires humility, presence, breath, and instinct. Mindset is too busy rehearsing its viewpoints to hear the nowality of life. I use nowality instead of reality because nowality brings it to present moment for me. Savage wisdom knows the moment mindset activates, sovereign sensing goes silent. Why mindset and mind never get to present moment experiences. Mindset is built from memory, never immediacy. Mindset is yesterday's logic pretending to guide today. It's stitched from old meanings, old fears, old interpretation, all of it's archived in the mind, and it's ready to take over the mind in your life. The present moment is alive, unpredictable, and sovereign. Mindset can't enter it because mindset only knows what's already happened. And that's why when some people says I gotta have the mindset, that's why your life stays the same, because it's rehearsing what's already happened. Mind activates thinking instead of sensing. Thinking is slow, cautious, repetitive, a museum mind mechanism. The present moment moves at instinct speed and breath speed and frontier speed. The mind tries to analyze the now using vocabulary from the past, which instantly collapses presence into interpretation. Sovereign sensing is the only doorway into the now. Mind can never access the now. Mindset protects identity. Identity is always historical, and hysterical. Identity is a curated exhibit, a character built from lineage, correctness, and emotional fossils. Present moment dissolves identity, so mindset refuses to enter it. Mindset keeps you reenacting who you were, never experiencing who you are in the present moment. That's why mind and mindset never arrive of the now. They're too busy maintaining the museum. Why thinking, knowing, knowledge, and mindset are museum mind controls. Because thinking is a museum mind's leash, thinking is never present. It's the curator voice pulling you back into the archived logic, inherited caution, and emotional fossils. Every time you think you activate yesterday's programming, and every time you think you activate yesterday's programming, because everything you think comes from yesterday. Savage liberation begins when you see thinking as a control, as you see thinking as a control mechanism designed to keep you inside the museum instead of riding across the frontier on your Mustang Moxie. Because knowing is an ancestral obedience disguised as intelligence. Knowing is lineage, beliefs, interpretations, cultural rules, and survival codes. It's the past pretending to be clarity. Knowledge is a museum exhibit, never a sovereign perception. Spirit frequency liberation erupts when you stop obeying what you know and start sensing what is actually here. Because mindset is identity, maintenance, and never freedom. Mindset protects the identity exhibit, the character built from fear, correctness, and inherited viewpoints. It keeps you repeating yourself, reenacting roles, obeying emotional fossils. Mindset is museum mind control because it anchors your nervous system to who you were taught to be instead of who you are rising of. Savage wisdom dissolves mindset and replaces it with sovereign immediacy and innovation. Why thinking, knowing, learning, knowledge, thoughts never get you to present moment. Because thinking is a replay of yesterday's nervous system reflexes. Thinking is never presence. It's a museum mind narrator recycling old interpretations, old fears, and old meanings. Where do you see that in your life? And I realize that in my life, and I've got a long ways to do, but I am rising out of it now. Not shifting, rising. I'm leaving it behind. I don't need it no more. I don't want it no more. Every thought is stitched from memory, never immediacy. The present moment moves at instinct speed, Thinking moves at archive speed. Kind of like my walking. No. Why warrior wise clarity. No understand as aware of the moment you think you no clarity is aware of the moment you think you leave the now. The moment you innovate, you leave the now. Because knowing is inherited certainty, never sovereign perception. Knowing is lineage, beliefs, rules, cultural scripts, and emotional fossils. It's ancestor obedience disguised as intelligence. And we live a lot of ancestor obedience if you witness the world through imagination. The present moment dissolves identity, but knowing protects it. Spirit frequency awareness rises only when you stop knowing and start sensing. Because knowledge is a museum exhibit, never a living experience. Knowledge is a museum exhibit, never a living experience. Knowledge is archived information, stored, categorized, and remembered. The present moment is alive, unpredictable, and breath born. Knowledge can describe the now, but it can never enter it. Thoughts keep you in interpretation. Sensing puts you in reality. Mindset is a museum. Mindset is a museum mind obedience, a curator voice polishing yesterday's limits. Mindset is identity glue. It keeps you stuck to who you were taught to be. And see, we were taught by society, our parents, and we hang on to that. Mindset is ancestor programming, old survival codes pretending to be clarity. Mindset is nervous system stagnation, a freezer response disguised as intelligent. Mindset is thought-based captivity. Thinking replaces sensing and collapses presence. Mindset is a viewpoint addiction. Opinions masquerading as truth. Because mindset is belief-based blindness. Emotional fossils steering your future. Mindset is a past tense navigation trying to steer the now with yesterday's map. Mindset is the ego's last fortress. Mindset is the ego's last fortress. A know-it-all stance that shuts off listening. Mindset is sovereignty sabotage. A mental cage blocking instinctual clarity. Why savage clarity, energized listening, maverick questions, hearken document, energetic liberation, politically incorrect inspiration, cowboy wisdom, untamed curiosity, adventurer's audacity, and expressing revolutionary revelation all rise you onto your pathways and your open range and your frontier. Because savage clarity is activated by untamed perception. Savage clarity never comes from thinking, it rises from raw, unfiltered sensing. Energized listening, hearken document, and maverick questions slice through museum mind fog and exposes and color and shows you what's the authentic now. These forces bypass ancestor programming and ancestor obedience and ignite your instinctual intelligence, lifting you into the born clarity because energetic liberation breaks every obedience loop. Politically incorrect inspiration, cowboy wisdom, and adventurer's audacity shatter cultural correctness. Inherited caution and identity maintenance. They dissolve the ego's safety scaffolding and return you to They to sovereign immediacy. Liberation rises because you stop reenacting yesterday's scripts and start perceiving with warrior wise presence. Because revolutionary revelations require untamed feral curiosity. Untamed curiosity and magnetic questioning open the frontier. They refuse the museum mind's limits. Expressing revolutionary revelations is the act of expressing from instinct, never memory. This combination generates savage clarity because it aligns you with the living moment, never the archived one. How does it feel when you say mindset? What do you feel? Then when you say savage clarity, what do you feel? I feel awakened and energized with savage clarity. And that's what you really want to experience life through, a savage clarity, because it's liberation, inspiration, and, and clarity and wisdom all in one. Anyway, I'm Robert Wilson with Cowboy Wisdom Unleashed podcast. May your life be a blessing, be as blessed as you are a blessing to me and you. Anyway, thank you and good night.